Are you a renter?
Do you have
The landlord.
There is something everyone should know.
As a tenant, you have rights.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand what some of the laws are, but also how the laws apply in their circumstances when they come to Canada, or for any of us really. What does this law mean, and how does that translate into how I live my life, how I live in an apartment, how I live with neighbors?
It's important for people to know their rights so that they know when things are being done properly and when things are not being done properly. Because if they don't know their rights, then they're more likely to be taken advantage of.
And I think even for the average Canadian, I don't think we really understand all of our rights and everything that needs to be done by all parties. So much more true for a newcomer that's brand new to the country.
Newcomers most often are people who have the ability to contribute so much in our community that if there are really some basic need issues that aren't being addressed, like housing, they are not going to be able to reach that sort of potential. I mean, housing and decent accommodations, affordable accommodations are huge for people's lives.
Well, like we saw in the workshops, there were so many examples of people who had no idea what their rights were. Some of the best examples were people giving deposits for damages, which is not legal according to the law in Ontario, or people not getting paid interest on their last month's rent deposit, or especially newcomers not realizing that it's a landlord's responsibility to make to address repair concerns.
And that's really the focus of these workshops, is explaining to people that you have rights, and more importantly, that this is how you can stand up for those rights. And these are the words that you can use and the actions that you can take. One of the things that happened in the workshops is that the participants themselves really started learning from each other. And started sharing those stories and hearing about how they had come up against some barriers and some challenges, where they went to try and address those challenges, what they could do about it. And I think really just felt some collegiality about the fact that we were all sort of in this together, and that we can help each other with this. And there's organizations in the room that are willing to help us. And we heard when we were at the YMCA, people thanking the agencies at the table that had come to the table to work with them and to help them to learn what their rights are. So I think, that's one of the things that we really got from those workshops, is that people can work together and learn from each other. The things that we hear from intakes when people come into legal assistance are similar to the stories that people were giving during the workshops. And a lot of those had to do with, how do I address a landlord who is not respecting me, is not caring for the properties properly in order for my family and I to live in a decent manner in our home.
It was really exciting to create the workshops, not only as an educator, but also as an artist, but as well as I had a lot of understanding about what it was like to be a tenant. I myself have rented, and I myself have been on both sides, where I've been evicted from my own place once. So I could appreciate and have a real empathy for those who might have been through the process.
I knew that it had to be a collaboration between ourselves, the appropriate experts, and the community members themselves.
In working with individuals with mental health issues, I'm in many situations with housing issues with landlords. And one of the things I certainly took from the workshop today is the importance of people knowing their rights, being able to stand up to the landlord, not being intimidated.
A landlord shouldn't judge us when it comes to renting, because we are all different, and he should respect the fact that we are different.
I've met so many people that the landlord gives them some grief, gives them some difficulty, and they feel that they have to move out without any eviction notice and without any supports. And they feel that they don't have any options. They feel really in a deficit. And I think everyone needs to know that no matter what your struggles are, whether you're dealing with mental health issues, or a newcomer, or have any other kind of barriers possibly, that you need to be able to get out and get help and seek help. There's a lot of help and advocacy available, legal help and other supports in the community.
I was once a refugee myself, and speaking from experience, I think that the biggest thing that people lack is information when you come in. The first would be the language. Not many refugees speak the language, and they just have this automatic barrier right away. So just having settlement workers and settlement providers, I think that it's very important, because we're the first point of contact with them, and then just us getting the knowledge that we need to have empowers them automatically.
Well, I think there's lots of different reasons why many people are afraid to get help, but certainly we know that many newcomers coming to Canada are afraid to challenge the government, are afraid to challenge authorities, don't want to be a problem in their eyes. So I think part of what we're trying to do is to let people know that you're not a problem by expecting your rights to be respected. You are not a problem by demanding that you are treated with dignity. That is what we expect here. And we want you to understand that and feel that you can demand that sort of treatment as well.
Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. I think that people just... Knowledge is power, and that's like a theme that's been occurring in these workshops, like at every session, and it's something that I truly believe in. So educate yourself, know what your rights are, and then don't be afraid to stand up to the people who are trying to trample all over you, so that that's your entitlement. You deserve that. So stick up for yourself, and it'll go a long way.
I think every party has a different sort of message that they need to be hearing, but it really is a message around support. How can we support this? It is an issue that it doesn't just impact newcomers, it impacts the greater community, it impacts our neighborhoods and how those neighborhoods interact with each other. So it impacts, I guess, questions of poverty and equality in our community.
I think that the most important advice that we can give individuals is that they come to someone for advice, that they speak to an organization, they speak to somebody that they trust to determine, what can I do? Maybe they don't want to go to court. Maybe they just need some information around how they can advocate for themselves, how they can feel empowered in speaking to a landlord, how they might be able to put things in writing, what they need to do in order to get their needs met in their current accommodations.
What kind of advice would you give?
So they can, if they don't know to speak English, so they can come to YMCA, like YMCA, they can take an interpreter and they can talk about their right.
Landlords should know that we know our rights.
It's important because people should know their rights. Because like you don't want somebody coming out of nowhere and like just like taking an advantage of you.
I learned a lot of rule in legal assistance.
Zainab's been looking for apartments for weeks on the internet. She scrolls through the listings and makes several calls. Every day she's been calling apartments, and finally she's found one that looks good. She speaks to the property manager on the phone and feels they have a really great conversation, and she's excited to go see the apartment. He seemed really great on the phone and was happy to have her come see it too. Zainab makes her way down to the property management office. When the property manager opens the door, he acts a lot different than he did on the phone. He's not interested in showing her the apartment at all, and makes excuses by saying that the apartment's already been rented. He won't even let her in the office. She can't understand this. She just spoke to him. Once he closes the door on her face, she wonders, is this discrimination? There are really only certain reasons a landlord can deny you housing. If you feel like you've been discriminated against, it's really important that you go get some legal advice and determine whether you are able to move forward in addressing that discrimination. Nate's been having ongoing problems with water in his apartment. He's fixed it several times himself because he doesn't want to call the landlord. He's late on his rent. But now the water's not working at all. He's tried to address these issues on his own. Although he doesn't want problems with his landlord, he knows now he has to call him. There really are two different issues when this happens and you are behind in your rent, but you have repair issues. It is important to get some help if you are having a hard time paying your rent, but you do have the right to expect that your basic essential needs like water and heat are available in your apartment. If you have repair problems, make sure you write out exactly what needs to be fixed and the date that you give that to your landlord. And you can expect that the landlord should respond to those repair needs. Zainab lives alone in her first apartment. She was really pleased with the level of security and felt really comfortable in this new apartment. She was comfortable until the landlord came in one day without giving any notice at all, or even calling her on the phone to let her know he was coming. She's really anxious and embarrassed that he's walked in while she's doing the dishes. She's wondering, how can he do this? Is he allowed to just come into my apartment? She thought, what am I supposed to do with this? How do I handle this? Landlords actually do not have the right to enter your apartment without giving you 24 hours written notice. It's really important that if a landlord does do that, that you explain to them, I understand that I have the right to expect 24 hours written notice from you. Zainab was having trouble making ends meet this month, so she was late paying her rent. Now we see the landlord is going to collect his overdue rent, as well as the extra fee for being late. He knocks on the door. It appears no one's home. Zainab is home, but she's afraid to see the landlord. She knows she will have the rent soon, but doesn't know how to explain, as English is difficult for her. The landlord doesn't like being paid late. Rather than wait any longer, he decides to take the next step toward eviction. Sometime later, after receiving notices from the landlord and a notice of hearing from the landlord-tenant board, Zainab is still trying to come up with her rent. She doesn't understand the notices and hopes the landlord will be patient and understand her situation. As we see, ignoring the situation has only made things worse. Now, without going to a hearing or responding to the letters, the board has little choice but to allow the eviction to go ahead. Zainab is a private person. She's embarrassed now that her neighbors know she's being evicted. It's really important that when someone gets a notice, that they bring that notice, if they don't understand the language used, to someone that they trust. Most often, landlords aren't able to charge you additional rent or late charges. But if that happens to you, you should bring your lease and your notice as quickly as possible to a community legal clinic that can help you to determine what your rights are in that situation.